Great to welcome New York Times best-selling author. He's got another great thriller out. Of course, the previous one did really great, called No Time for Goodbye, and he's got another one out called A Noise Downstairs. We're going to find out about it. Linwood Barclay is our guest. He joined us today by telephone. And Linwood, are you up in Toronto today?
Just outside, yeah.
How are things up? I know they had some tough times recently with that, but how are things in Toronto?
Well, as you say, we started off not too well here. We had a rather terrible incident in the city with a shooting a couple of nights ago. It's not the kind of thing it doesn't happen here too often, but Toronto's a tough place, and we'll pull together and we'll get through this.
Yeah, my grandparents, my mother were born in Canada, so I have an affinity for the country up there. So you hate to hear things like that, but it is a great city. So hopefully it'll work out.
It is a great place.
But in the meantime, congratulations not only on the book you have now, but the previous ones. I think this is number 19, right?
I keep trying to remember if it's 17, 18, or 19. There's a whole bunch of them. That's what I say. We're closing in. I just say we're closing in on 20.
That's pretty good in any field to have that many books. But let's talk about this one. Again, I don't like to give too much away when I talk to novelists like yourself, but this is another one of those great thrillers that you're specialized in. And this one involves, I believe it's a college professor. He sees something really terrible that happens, and it really affects him. And then there's a typewriter involved. So I'll let you kind of handle the rest, what you want to tell the audience.
Well, it's about a guy named Paul Davis who does see a colleague, a fellow professor that he works with, driving rather erratically. And when he stops to help him out, he discovers his friend has two dead women in the back of his station wagon, and he looks like he's about to bury them. And Paul nearly ends up becoming the third victim. And we move ahead a few months, and Paul's colleagues in prison, and Paul himself is in therapy because he's really suffered post-traumatic stress disorder from what happened to him. Not just, the physical injury, but a colleague, someone he thought he knew could do something this terrible. And Paul thinks maybe writing about what he went through would have a therapeutic effect. And his wife buys for him as kind of inspiration. He loves old antique typewriters. And so she buys him this old Underwood, these old typewriters that weigh about the same as a Volkswagen. And he's not going to write his book on that, but it's inspiring just the same to have it in the office with him. And it seems like a great idea until in the middle of the night, Paul starts hearing noises like ch-ch-ch-ch-ch. He hears the typewriter downstairs in the middle of the night, and Paul thinks, well, that's not possible. So maybe it's the stress I'm under. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe I dreamt it. It couldn't really be happening. And the way to prove that it couldn't be happening, is to just roll a sheet of paper into that typewriter before he goes to bed. And when he sees nothing on that paper in the morning, he'll know it was a dream. Except that's not how it turns out. And Paul's starting to wonder if it's possible that somehow those two murdered women are trying to get in touch with him, because as it turns out, before they were killed, they were forced to write apologies on an old typewriter that was never recovered. And that's kind of our setup. Is Paul hallucinating this? Is there something going on, or is Paul the victim of something that's even far more evil? And that's our setup for A Noise Downstairs.
Yeah, that's a great premise right there. Just from what I read, again, I don't like to give too much away, so I like that. It's slightly Twilight Zone-ish.
It's a very tricky book to talk about, because I think more than anything else I've ever written, this book has more twists in it than I've ever done in one book, and so I think it's hard to say much more about it.
How do you, obviously, any author, you're always, I guess, writing down notes or coming up with ideas, but does it get more difficult? I know we said this is 18, 19, or number 20 book for you. How do you come up with these ideas?
Well, it's more difficult and less difficult. The actual sitting of writing down of a book, as you say, I've done it quite a few times, and so that part I'm very much used to. The challenge, I think, is when you start a new book is to try. You always want to do a book that's better than any book that came before it. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you think, yeah, I've done it, and I think this time I have, but there's other times you think, well, this is good, but it's still not my favorite, like what I did a couple of years ago. So there's always that challenge to not repeat yourself, but at the same time give readers and the fans who really like your books something of the experience they had before. They want to come back to you for the things that they like, the momentum, the fast story, the puzzles, but you don't want to give them the same book as the time before. It's trying to keep it fresh.
Yeah, I guess that would be one of the challenges. Like you said, you've written so many so far. You have to kind of remember what you wrote before, so you don't have the same plot line. And say, I had that in a previous book, right?
That can be true. Thankfully, I have other editors and agents who might say, "You did that before, you know." Oh yeah, right.
How do you go about? I like to ask also, authors. Do you like doing dialogue? Is that a favorite part of you? Some authors love that. Some say that's the hardest.
I love writing dialogue. The parts I hate writing are the descriptive passage as he drove up the long driveway and describing the woods and the house. I mean, I hate that stuff. I love writing what people say, and because you can communicate so much storyline and plot and everything through conversation, and conversation also tells you what the people are like, because personality comes through dialogue. So I love to write. I like to write what people are saying, and I like to write what they're doing, and I think that makes a story really move quickly as well.
Do you write longhand, like a plot line out, or do you just do it all on the computer, or how do you go about it?
Oh, I'm on a computer. I mean, I spent 30 years working in newspapers, and I think only a couple of those years was still with typewriters, and then we were on the computers. I've always worked on a computer. I mean, I make notes longhand in a notebook while I'm thinking about what some aspects of the story, and I'll jot down notes here and there. But everything else is done on the computer. In fact, there was a time when every time I finished a chapter, I would print out the extra pages, and I'd have this pile of a book at the end with this pile of pages. And I don't even do that anymore. I just write an entire book in the computer and email to myself every day at the end, so I know I've got a copy. And I'm saving a fortune on paper. This is a good thing.
I was going to say, yeah, make sure you email yourself. I do that too, so you don't lose it. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I know one of your previous books, I believe The Accident, they made that into a TV series over in France, right? So that's pretty good.
The Accident was made into a 6-part series in France. It finally actually aired a couple months ago and got nice ratings. And last year in Canada, we shot a film. I did a book a few years ago called Never Saw It Coming, and the director was a friend and asked if I'd write the screenplay while she looked for money. And we got that made, and we're going to have it's Eric Roberts is in it, and it's going to premiere in Toronto next month. So we're hoping we'll get it to a much wider audience soon.
And again,
and even now I'm working with Entertainment One about making a series out of what I call my Promise Falls trilogy that came out over the last couple of years.
Oh, great! I was going to say, when you write a book, I guess in the back of your mind, you want to kind of think of it as people watching it as well, like almost a TV series or a movie. You make it visual in some way, right? When you write a book.
Yeah, but the thing is, and even as I write, I mean, I don't write a book thinking, oh, this will make a great movie, but when I'm writing it, I see it as a movie in my head, like it's playing out in the screen at the front of my forehead while I'm writing a book. So I think very visually in terms of what's going on and what's happening.
Well, this one is called A Noise Downstairs, and we've been talking with Linwood Barclay today. Linwood, give out your website, and people get more information about the book.
Yeah, absolutely. It's linwoodbarclay.com. That's kind of a weird name, so I'll spell it. It's LINWOODBARCLAY. linwoodbarclay.com, all sorts of information there. And people can also find me on Twitter, and there's my Facebook author page as well.
Great. Linwood, pleasure talking to you. Hopefully we can do it again. Good luck with this one. I know it'll do well, and we'll talk to you when the next one comes out.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Great. Thank you.